Greetings, fellow Slayers. Well, it's now time to take a look at another episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer Season 1, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. The Master reads a prophecy from the writings of Aurelius to his minions. And there will be a time of crisis, of worlds hanging in the balance, and this time shall come the Anointed, the Master's great warrior. And the Slayer will not know him, will not stop him, and he will lead her into hell. As it is written, so it shall be. 5 will die, and from their ashes the Anointed One shall rise. The brethren of Aurelius shall greet him and usher him to his immortal destiny. Ugh. Buffy finally gets that date when sensitive hunk Owen shows an interest in her. To Giles' exasperation, all Buffy can think about is impressing him with an uncharacteristic interest in poetry. In the school cafeteria, Buffy has to fight off Cordelia to sit at one table with Owen, but it is worth it. He asked Buffy out on a date to the Bronze that very evening. However, Giles has found out about the prophecy from the symbol on a ring they found in the cemetery. He is convinced that the Anointed One will rise that night, and so, despite Buffy's protests, he spent hours sitting on graves waiting for a vampire to rise. None does, however, and though Giles is certain that his calculations are correct, he calls their stakeless stakeout quits. Buffy rushes to the Bronze, only to see Owen dancing with Cordelia. Crushed, she leaves without trying to talk to him. Aww. At the same time, in a van on the way to Sunnydale, a man stands up and begins to lecture the other passengers on God's judgment, quoting prophecies. Suddenly, a vampire walks in front of the van, causing it to crash. Other vampires swarm the wreck, attacking the passengers, including the religious man. The next morning, Owen asks Buffy out on another date and even gives her a pocket watch that she doesn't miss at this time. Buffy jumps at the opportunity while Xander is left to stew in his jealousy. When evening comes, Giles shows up at Buffy's house, waving a newspaper that shows 5 people dead when the van crashed. Among the suspected murderer, Andrew Borba, the man who was quoting prophecies. Buffy insists on going to the Bronze, though, so Giles decides to check the Sunnydale funeral home himself. Unfortunately, there are vampires present to get to the Anointed One, and they trap Giles in a room. Xander and Will have followed him, though, and run back to the Bronze to get Buffy. There, first Cordelia, then Angel try to come in between Buffy and Owen. Finally, Xander and Willow manage to get her to come to the funeral home by pretending to be a couple that wants to do something daring on a double date. When Buffy figures out what has happened, she tries to dump Owen, but unfortunately he tags along. Even worse, he is present in the funeral home when Borba rises as a vampire. In the fight, Owen's knocked unconscious. Buffy, angry that he has killed her date, kills Borba by sliding him into the furnace while still alive, or rather, still undead. The next morning, Owen is extremely excited about what they have been through once more. This is what he likes about Buffy, he says, and almost being killed made him feel alive. She realizes that there is no way that she can have a relationship with him. Sooner or later, he will get himself killed. With a heavy heart, she breaks up with him. Aww. Giles tries to comfort her by telling her what a burden it was for him as a 10-year-old to find out his destiny was to be a watcher. He would rather have been a fighter pilot or possibly a grocer. Both agree that at least the Master will be unhappy too because the Anointed One was destroyed. But in his underground lair, the Master is overjoyed as he welcomes the real Anointed One. Not Borba after all, but a young boy who was on the van with him. Bum bum bum. So now let's take a look at some continuity surrounding this episode. After throwing a minion across the room, the Master says, "Here endeth the lesson," which is later spoken by Spike and Buffy. Buffy and the gang believe they have actually stopped the Anointed One, but they learn otherwise in Prophecy Girl. Giles' assertion that he doesn't have an instruction manual is not strictly true. Apparently, there is a Slayer handbook. Giles just decides not to use it on Buffy, as he reveals in What's My Line, Part 2. Cordelia's line when she sees Angel, "Hello, salty goodness," is repeated when she reverts back to her teenage persona and first sees Angel. This episode introduces the Anointed One, who plays a major role in following episodes. Giles mentions his father and grandmother were watchers, which is later shown in The Tales of Vampires Part 5 and Daddy Issues Part 1. Giles' interest in being a fighter pilot, to start by beginning sponsored studies at the early age of 10, is shown through his great aunt's memories in Women of a Certain Age. And now let's take a look at the production of this episode. The episode was alternately titled The Anointed. Well, that actually would have been a fairly interesting title, so yeah. So overall, I think this is a pretty enjoyable episode, and the fact that it introduces the Anointed One subplot of the series is actually pretty good. Or of the season, actually, so yeah. So overall, I give Never Kill a Boy on a First Date 3 vampire steaks out of 5. Well, then tune in tomorrow as we take a look at The Pack. So, until then, see you, everybody.